If you picked up one of these R7s when they came out, you got yourself a good camera. Well, hey, what's up? My name is Tony, and I'm a filmmaker and photographer in the St. Louis area, and today we are talking about the Canon R7. I've never used this camera before, but I've heard so many good things about it, so I wanted to rent it and share some of my opinions with you on how it does, mostly for video. That's almost all that I've used this for. I've had it for about a week and a half or so. I've done some weddings, I've done some interview style talking head things. I actually took this with me to an off-road event that I was filming, and I want to share with you just some of my initial impressions on using this after a couple days. I did rent this, I didn't buy it. It's a great little camera, and I want to share with you some of the things that I've learned. Now, if you're not familiar with it, it's a crop sensor. That means it's got the tiny little sensor 1.6 crop on all of my lenses, like the 24-105 that lived on this for almost the entire time that I had it. First impressions, it's very similar to the R5. In fact, it's not much smaller. In fact, if I didn't really think about it, it really didn't feel that much smaller in my hand, which kind of surprised me. One of the things that I was looking for was just a little bit smaller camera for every day. I've used the R50 before, and it's significantly smaller. It's smaller than this. Both good cameras, but the R7, some of the reasons that attracted me to it, one, it shoots in C-Log 3. That's a big deal for me because the R5, the R5C, the R6, all of those cameras shoot in C-Log 3, which I like to color my footage. All of it I shoot is in log. And so in order to have a camera that I'm gonna be able to use as a B camera or a C camera, I'm gonna have to have that log footage. The other thing that attracted me to this camera, believe it or not, it's a simple thing, but it's this battery. I love the size of these batteries because that's the same as all of my cameras. It takes SD cards. Now, I shoot on UHS 2s just for the transfer speed. It does work with UHS 1s. So if you wanna spend, a lot less and get those slower cards, it does work for the most part on those slower cards. Now, those are the things that really attracted me. How did it do? Well, in all honesty, I, for the most part, could not tell the difference when I'm editing R5 and R7 footage. It colors very similar, the colors are the same, the exposure's the same. If I were to look really closely, I do notice the blurriness, the background, the bokeh, if you will. It just doesn't have the depth of field that a full frame sensor does. If you can live without that, it's not that big of a deal. Now, you can still get nice separation from your background and your subject. All you have to do is use a zoom lens like a 24-105. Like I said, that lens basically lived on this camera. And so that in itself is only an f4. So most of the time, I'm not gonna get a ton of depth of field with that anyways, unless I zoom into that 105. And then you can just get some really beautiful, beautiful image out of it. What else did I notice about this? It handled low light fairly well. I don't think I ever shot over maybe 6400, and that was because when I'm shooting a wedding, the ceremony was outside, so I had plenty of light. I actually had to use an ND filter. And then once we went inside, I used some Nanlite Forza 60Cs. I like to light the reception toasts and the blessing and the dances and all of that, and they're not huge lights, they're actually really small, and they don't put out a ton of light, but it's just enough to give me some nice key on the subjects and kind of get rid of some of those down shadows that you get with natural light. So in that case, this camera did just fine as a C cam for my weddings. When I was outside, obviously I'm shooting at 800, so once again, I'm on an ND filter. So when it comes to low light, for me, it wasn't that big of a deal. Now, just talking about the body, it is different for me. If you're familiar with it, the camera itself has only 2 dials. It has your shutter, which I set for shutter, and then it has one up here, which a lot of people didn't really care for. It is up top instead of down bottom like on an R5 or R6. Now, for me, it doesn't matter because for the R5, I actually use the top dial for my aperture anyways. And then what I'll do is, so shutter up for my finger, my thumb is aperture, and then I always set the ISO on my control ring on my RF lenses. So for me, it wasn't that big of a deal. In fact, it felt fairly natural. Like I said, that's the way that I have my R5 set up. Shutter is up front, and then right here on the top, I use this one as my aperture, and then ISO is there. So I didn't really need this bottom dial, which a lot of people complain about. Other than that, the menu system is very similar. It all felt like a Canon camera that I'm familiar with. The speed is great, shoots 4K 60, which is great. I had it out in the blazing sun and it never overheated. And it never shut off after 30 minutes, which I just absolutely loved. That's one of the main reasons that I rented this camera instead of an R5. And it's a little bit cheaper, so there's that. The fact that it does not shoot off after 30 minutes is it's just a really nice feature that I wish that the R5 had. Now the R5C, the R5 Mark II, the R6 Mark II, all of those don't have that. And so that's kind of the next generation, and I'm excited that that's a feature that I don't have to brag about. Like, that's just the standard from now on. So what else do I want to say about this? It's a good little camera. If you've never used one, I suggest you rent it. Right now, they're like $1,500 on B&H, which I'll put an affiliate link down below. If you do end up buying things, feel free to use my affiliate links. They help me out. In fact, I make a little bit of money from that, which is really nice. What else do I want to say about this? It's a good little camera. If you're okay with an APS-C sensor and want to save significant amount of money, this is a fast camera. It's great for wildlife. It's great for video specifically, and I don't have too many negative things to say about it. I did notice that it's a little bit noisier than my full frame cameras, but I'm the one that's gonna notice that in the editing process. Most of my clients are never gonna notice that it's a little bit noisier, but I don't have any technical specs to prove that, and I really don't care. Really, my bottom line is, are my clients gonna be happy with their video? And the truth is, yes. Yes, it is. They're not gonna be able to see the differences between 2 cameras, and I think that it's a really good camera. All right, the only thing I didn't really care for is really that bokeh, but once again, I don't care. The way that I was using this as a C camera, had it in the back of the wedding ceremony, and I needed everything in focus, and so that shallow depth of field wasn't that big a deal for me. Do you have this camera? I'm curious what your thoughts are. What are your hang-ups? What have you noticed that you wish they would have upgraded? For me, this is the best APS sensor on the market. I just love it. Now, I know, I'm a Canon snob. I am. I love Canon cameras, but for me, this is a great little APS-C. If you are learning, should you buy this camera? Maybe. I think that you could probably get away with the R50, which is about half the cost of this. Has a smaller battery. It has, it doesn't have log. It has a much smaller footprint. And what I would suggest is get an R50 and get a nifty 50, an RF 50mm f1.8, and just start shooting and learning. And when you max out the capability of that camera, you'll know it, and you'll want log footage, and you'll want the better battery, and you'll want XYZ, whatever it is. Then you can determine, do you need an R7? Do you need an R6 Mark II? Do you need an R5? What is your price points? And so that would be my suggestion. I personally wouldn't look at the other cameras, the R10 or the R100 specifically. That's just, it's an entry-level camera. And so this is 100% able to be used in a professional workflow. And so that's one of the reasons why I rented it. Okay, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. Have you used the R7? Like it? Dislike it? I'm a fan. If you got one, you got a good camera. All right, guys, well, those are my thoughts. I shared a little bit of footage with you from the wedding and from the off-road event and the testimonial. Like I said, I did not take a bunch of photos with it. I did fire off some photos when I was scouting a tree farm, and I got back and I was like, man, this is just not editing photos great. And I realized that I shot them in JPEG instead of RAW, which is what I'm used to. And so I played around a little bit more and took some photos in RAW, and they edit very similar to the R5. That's all I got. It's a great camera. I'd love to hear your thoughts though. Share them with me. Until next time, subscribe, leave comments, and like the video. All right, see you soon.